Hi everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about how to graph a basic sine function in the form a sine b of x. So a is our amplitude and b is our cycles. So in order to graph a function in this form, we need four main components. We need our amplitude, which is the distance between the midline and the max or min. And remember that distance is always positive. So we denote amplitude as the absolute value of a. Cycles, or our b value, is how many complete rotations you will see between 0 and 2 pi. So that's our b. Our period is how long it takes the graph to complete one rotation. And the formula to find the period is taking 2 pi and dividing it by b, where b is your cycles. And the interval is actually what we're going to set the x-axis scale to, and that is what we count by. And the way we find that is by taking the period and dividing it by 4. So let's put this all into play now with an example. So the question here says, graph f of x equals 2 sine x over the interval from 0 to 2 pi. So like I said before, we need those four main components. We need our a, our amplitude, our c, our cycles, p, our period, and I. So you're going to notice me say a lot, find A, C, P, I. That's our amplitude, our cycles, our period, and our interval. So the amplitude is found by taking the absolute value of the number in front. So the absolute value of A, or 2 rather, is 2. C, our cycles, is found by the number in front of the x. So the number in front of the x is simply 1. So our cycles is 1. The period, which we defined before, is 2 pi over b, where b is our cycles. So not to confuse the letters b and c, b is our cycles. So since our cycles is 1, it's simply 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. And our interval is found by taking our period and dividing it by 4. So our period we just found is 2 pi, and if we divide that by 4, we get pi over 2 in simplified form. So if you recall the definition of interval that I used, I said it's what we count by. So this interval is how we're going to set our x-axis scale. So we're going to count by 1/2 pies, or 1/2, right? So think about counting by 1/2. We can count simply like this: 1/2 pi, 2/2 pi, 3/2 pi, and 4/2 pi. This is how we count by halves: 1/2, 2/2, 3/2, 4/2. And if you simplify some of these, you'll notice that 2 pi over 2, the pi's will cancel, the 2's will cancel, and this is really pi. And over here, 4 divided by 2 is just 2, so that simplifies to 2 pi. So we've got 1/2 pi, which is pi over 2, pi, and then 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So the direction said over the interval from 0 to 2 pi, so I needed to stop once I got to 2 pi. If it said to 4 pi, we would just keep counting. So we'd go 5/2, 6/2, 7/2, 8/2, all the way until we got a simplified form of 4 pi. Okay, so let's put these four values, these tick marks, right here on our x-axis. Now you want to spread them out so they're not on top of each other. And we're going to label this one as pi over 2, pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. Now our amplitude is how far up and down from the midline we're at. So since there's no plus or minus d like we spoke about earlier on in the week, that just means our midline is going to be 0. So you could even write that out if you need to. So f of x equals 2 sine 1x is the same thing as saying plus 0. So a plus 0 means that my midline is going to be here. Y equals 0. So the amplitude is how far up from the midline we are. So we must go up 2 and then down 2. And now that we want to graph a positive sine graph, notice how it's a positive 2. So in order to do this, you really need to know off the top of your head what a positive sine graph looks like. So I'm just going to kind of graph a sketch of what one looks like right here. So if you remember, a positive sine graph starts at the midline and goes up first, and then goes down and back up. So these are the 5 points that make up our positive sine graph. So that's what we're going to mirror here. So every tick mark that I go over, I'm going to follow the pattern. So we're starting here at 0. We're going to go up to pi over 2, down to pi, 3 pi over 2, and 2 pi. So each tick mark, I just decided to follow my pattern, and that is my sine curve. Now let's see if this makes sense. Does my period be 2 pi? Did it take 2 pi to complete one cycle? Absolutely. Do I see one cycle between 0 and 2 pi? Yeah, that's the definition of cycles. So that works perfect. That's how we graph a sine curve. Okay, let's try another example. All right, so now this question says graph 2 cycles of -3 sine 2x. So let's always start with A, C, P, and I. So the absolute value of A is the number in front. So the absolute value of A, absolute value of -3 is 3. That tells you my amplitude. The B is the number in front of the X. That is my cycles. So my cycles are 2. Period is defined as 2 pi over B, where B is the number of cycles. So 2 pi over 2 reduces to pi. Interval is defined as period divided by 4. So my period is pi, and I divide by 4. Now remember, interval is what we count by, but we need to know where to stop. The other problem had said 0 to 2 pi was the interval. This one says 2 cycles. So I need to figure out how many points are in a cycle. So since this is a negative sine graph, I'm just going to draw a quick sketch of what it looks like up here. Remember that sine always starts at the midline, no matter if it's positive or negative. And a negative sine graph goes down first. So up, so it goes down, up, and then down. So take a look at how many tick marks I would need. So we would need 1 here, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's 4 tick marks in one cycle, 5 if you count the origin. So let's make that note when we figure out how much we're counting by, right? So interval, 1/4 pi, 2/4 pi, 3/4 pi, 4/4 pi. So let's see. The origin would be here, so this would be my first tick mark. So let's count from this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We need 4 tick marks. Now, if I want 2 cycles, let's see how many I'm going to need. So we're going to keep following. So down, up, and down again. So that would be 2 full cycles. So if we count over, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we need 8 tick marks total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we have to go 4 more. So 4/4 pi, 5/4 pi, 6/4 pi, 7/4 pi, and 8/4 pi. Now, you can reduce any of these that you want. You don't have to, but I know this one can be pi over 4. This one is pi. This one is 3 pi over 2. And this one is 2 pi. So let's do our 8 tick marks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And we're going to put these values. So pi over 4. Excuse me, this one's pi over 2. 3 pi over 4, pi, 5 pi over 4, 3 pi over 2, 7 pi over 4, and 2 pi. Now we know our midline again because this is plus 0. We know that my midline is going to be at the line y equals 0 still. So my amplitude of 3 means we're going to go up 3 and down 3. And since this is a negative sine graph, we're going to follow this pattern every tick mark. So we're going to go, start at the midline, down, up, down, up, and down. And then just connect Make sure you're connecting them curvy, but that would be 2 cycles of this graph. All right, that's it for today. If you have any questions, now is a good time to jot them down. Otherwise, we'll see you in class tomorrow. Have a great night.